It's time for the Hockey Writers Grindline, a weekly show covering everything Detroit Red Wings. Brought to you by our own iconic top line of Wings writers. Sit back and enjoy The Grind.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Grind Line here at the Hockey Writers. I'm your host, Matthew Zator, and as always, joined in by my line mates, Evan Sabourin and Devin Little. Also got Andrew Rinaldi as a guest on the show. He covers the Grand Rapids Griffins for the Calder Times. Welcome, Andrew. How's it going?
It's going pretty good. Thanks again for having me on this show. I always love coming on and talking Griffins whenever I can, so I appreciate the invite.
For sure. So our show is going to be pretty much centered around prospects and the Griffins. So that's going to be, we always have fun talking about the prospects. So, some names are probably going to come up. So let's just get right into it and start with our one good, one bad, as we always do on the show. And I'll start with you, Andrew, on this, a good and a bad from this past week. It doesn't have to be Red Wings related because obviously Red Wings haven't been playing, but take it away.
This past week. Let's see. I just everything's been so Griffins focused for me lately as I've been recapping the season. I guess the good for me was kind of how much this team leaned on those young prospects. I mean, there certainly was a big veteran presence there in Grand Rapids, but carrying the load, especially in playoffs, was, the types of Marco Kasper, Johansson, Berggren, Carter Mazur, Sebastian Kosa was massive. So seeing kind of, the leaning more on those types of players, especially in such crucial minutes there in the postseason, was probably the story of the season for the Griffins for me. And the bad, I guess, is kind of connected to that, is in that postseason stretch, I think you kind of wanted those veteran pieces to step up and contribute a little bit more. Just didn't. I mean, not saying that there wasn't kind of Austin Czarnik was incredible there as well, but some guys like Matt Loff, Tim Gettinger, guys that were in there to produce at that critical point in the season, just there just wasn't a whole lot of it. Taro Rossi was another one that really you wanted kind of just a little bit more, especially he's an unrestricted free agent and everything this year. It just wasn't there, unfortunately, and the Griffin season was cut short by a better team in Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there was progression because the Griffins hadn't made the playoffs in a while, and it's great to see them there. But you want those veteran pieces to contribute too, and obviously they didn't. And I was surprised Hirose didn't contribute more, because I've been a fan of his for the last few seasons, and his brother's here in Vancouver, so I mean it's pretty. That's why I followed both of them. So I was surprised he didn't do more. All right, Evan, I'll go to you. What's a good and a bad from this past week for you?
Well, my good is something that I'm pretty sure the majority of us here can all finally see Simon Edmondson. Well, we think we've seen Simon Edmondson play his final game in Grand Rapids. And Andrew, I know we skipped your rookie lap, and I'll get past that. But the one of the stories of this show this year, basically the whole year, was us complaining about Edmondson not being up. And I think what we saw in those last few games he played in the regular season, that he'll no longer have any residency in Grand Rapids, and we really like that. My bad is the summer's just getting long waiting for this Kane ordeal. Is this going to happen? Is it not going to happen? There was talk this week that the agents are meeting with Steve Yzerman this week, so I mean, that's a big thing, man. I really hope this gets wrapped up for the draft, because the draft's coming up here in about 3 weeks, and I'd really like to, have that Kane thing locked down. But I'm just keeping my praying to the hip gods. It's another thing we do here, Andrew, that we pray that Kane stays healthy and his hip stays healthy, and we also pray that he resigns and comes back to Hockey Town, because it was quite the show this year with Showtime. So With that, I toss it to you, Devin. What do you got for us?
Oh boy. My one good from the week is going to be Amadeus Lombardi celebrating his 21st birthday, which of course means that he can now legally drink champagne or beer or whatever he wants to drink out of the Calder Cup if they win it next season. Always love seeing the kids grow up, right? I'm sure he's excited to not have to or to pass the ID check at the clubs too. My one bad is going to be some of the names that are kind of under consideration over in Utah. We'll talk about some non Michigan based stuff real quickly. I don't know how you guys feel about this list of names, but the Utah Blizzard, Utah Hockey Club, Utah Mammoth, Utah Outlaws, Utah Venom, and Utah Yeti seem to be the top six. And it seems like everyone's kind of in disagreements on what's the best one. No one's like, yeah, this is it. I personally I like Blizzard, but I can see why people wouldn't like that. And I also like Utah Hockey Club, and I also understand that it's probably the most boring one out of the bunch. So, all in all, I don't know that there's a real option there that screams, "This is it, this is it." Um, I personally, I would have loved for them to have gone with the Utah Phoenix just as a little nod to where they came from, but hopefully they whatever choice they do make is a good one, and it's going to lead to some really awesome branding because Lord knows the Coyotes had some really great branding.
I'm
Yeah.
all in for the Yeti, man. Give me the Yeti. That's just funky. And I'm not gonna lie too. I went on Twitter a couple of times to see if I could, make one of those names, and that way they'd
Yeah.
have to pay me to buy the account back. And none of the names really existed on Twitter, but for some reason they were blocked, and I couldn't take them. And I was like, ah, shit, that could have been some fun summer money. I was trying to make Yeti, Blizzard. Yeah, it didn't work out for me.
A for effort.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see what name they actually decide. And I saw those logos leaked around. It's like Utah Hockey Club seems to be I don't know if those are going to be the true ones. That they're very boring logos and very boring branding, but hey, we'll see. We'll see what happens and that with that because it happened really quickly with all that Utah stuff too. And
Absolutely.
we'll see how it all goes. All right, back to Red Wings and Grand Rapids, and we're going to start talking about a couple guys we've talked about a lot about on this show in the past, and had a hype train for one of them, Jonatan Berggren, and and Johansson no longer waiver exempt next season, so they either are on the team or they're gone. I mean, because if they get put on waivers, guess what? There's going to be a team that's going to grab them. That's almost a guarantee. So they're going to have to make the team or something's going to have to happen. I'll start with you, Andrew. Do you think they have what it takes to hold down a roster spot next season in Detroit? I mean, or, somewhere else in the NHL. Do you think they got it?
Yeah, I think this postseason was definitely kind of a showcase for what Berggren can do. Is offensively, he was just incredible and coming up big in big moments consistently time after time. I mean, in that first Rockford series, he had 3 goals and they were all game winners. So I don't know how it gets more clutch than that. He had a hat trick in game 4. Just kind of, I think he was just really motivated to prove that, like, yeah, this was his last game in the AHL, at least, in this organization. So I've kind of always had my concerns with, I've seen him kind of take some big hits. I know he's not the biggest body, and so it's kind of had like, had a couple of those over the course of the season, but he lives for those big moments, and I think he's ready now to really kind of take that full-time job. And I can say the same for Johansson as well. This guy was as steady as it comes on the blue line, and that's really kind of just it's a bit in the AHL. You can see flashes of skill often, but putting it together consistently night in, night out is a big test for a lot of these young kids. And Albert brought it every single night. And I think, yeah, he's ready to make a jump into that top six. Whether there's room for him, I know the contract situation's a little messy up there in Detroit, but yeah, they're done wearing their Griffin sweaters, which I was one of the few that was not complaining about Simon Edvinsson down in Grand Rapids, but I'm a little biased. Um, those are a couple of guys that I've kind of made my peace that I'm not seeing them down there anymore, and I think they're ready for the big time, and I'm excited to kind of see what they'll do with those opportunities.
Well, Berggren had already kind of proven himself in the NHL last season, and we thought, well, he's going to end up having a full-time spot this season. But then Yzerman went and signed a bunch of free agents and kind of pushed him out. And yeah, he's shown that he doesn't, he's done all he can in the AHL. He's got to be in the NHL at somewhere, someplace, and we'll see if it's in Detroit or elsewhere. Right, Devin, what do you think? I know you've mentioned a couple, we've talked about them on the show before. Do you think they're in Detroit next season?
Just a few times.
Just a
Yeah,
couple.
like you mentioned, we were conducting hype trains for Berggren a couple of years ago. I've been very vocal about how much I like Albert Johansson. Yeah, I'm pretty confident these guys are NHL ready. And it does, at least for me, it really just comes down to whether that's in Detroit or not. I think that expectations are going to be kind of a key thing for both of them. You saw Berggren he leaps and bounds above of everybody on the Griffins in terms of production, just sheer production. I think he had just under a point per game in the AHL this season, and no one else was even close. So he's, you might be tempted to look at that and go, oh, so he's going to come into the NHL next season and now be like a 60, 70 point guy. I don't think that's what Berggren is. I don't know if he's ever going to be that kind of guy. But if you're expecting him to come in and be a steady middle six winger that can kind of move up and down depending on the situation and whatnot, and can chip in and maybe even look like your best player on a random night. I think he's capable of doing that. He did that a season ago, depending on how you're looking at it. And then he just really proved this, like just kind of put an exclamation point on it this year. And then Johansson, I think, same idea. You have to not expect him to come up and immediately be, this big time difference maker on the blue line. I think he's going to be really good. I think he's going to be kind of a lot of what people maybe thought and hoped Gustav Lindstrom would be on the blue line, where he's just kind of a quiet guy who takes care of business, isn't going to light up the score sheet by any means, but you need to have those guys that just take care of business and complement their defensive partner and just get the puck out of the zone. I think that's what Johansson can be. And he really kind of showed that throughout the season this year, especially when he had the opportunity to play alongside Edvinsson and Grand Rapids top pairing. So, yeah, to reiterate, I think they're both ready. I think that they'll both make an impact to some degree. And I think it's really just a matter of where they're making said impact and how much of an impact they can make, because I don't think either of them are, going to be elite talents, but I think that they can both help a team win.
Yeah, they're both guys that are going to be, and Berggren, I think, is a middle six guy. I think he can definitely be that top line, maybe, sub in at times and be able to thrive there for a bit, but not a consistent guy. And Johansson, yeah, I see him as a very good utility defenseman. So yeah, both of them definitely would have a role. It just depends on if the Red Wings have room for them. And that's going to be the big question. Evan, I'll finish off with you. I know you like both these guys. What do you think about them next season?
Well, I think after these playoffs, Bergeron's trade value has never been higher. He was a stud.
Yeah.
He was a stud in these playoffs. I just don't know what's going on behind the scenes. Something just feels weird about how he wasn't up all this season. The guy's played 79 games already in the NHL. So technically he's not a rookie, and we're, he's going to turn 24 this year. So these guys are seasoned, man. They're over seasoned, kind of like the steaks I made on Memorial Day. They've played their, Johansson, I think, should have got some time this year. I would have loved to see him. And listening to a podcast recently, maybe a month ago or so, I think it was either Carter Mazer or Kosa on that podcast, whose name we shall not repeat, said, Johansson was arguably the Griffins' best player night in and night out with his steady presence. I'm really excited to see what he can do. Again, like I said, I would have loved to have seen him get some time this year, but I think he's going to step in and fill a role. And I don't have any problem saying I think he'll probably be, he could even play as high as the second pair. I just don't, I think I think he's good.
Yeah.
But again, Berggren, it's going to be interesting to see, especially coming up here with the draft. I mean, is there a move to be made for him? He's probably the biggest Red Wings trade chip right now that's, could be on the block. So if he could bring back something of substance, I'm looking at you, Martin Netchus, with a draft pick or two. I'm all for that. We see these things that we don't know how much is true, that he's, not happy with the organization, refused to sign an extension, blah, blah, blah. But there's no denying the kid has talent. I agree with you guys when you say he is a middle sixer. He has shown that he has playmaking abilities, a little bit on the smaller side. But I think there's going to be a lot of things like that have to happen for him to flourish here in Detroit. One of them is going to be about who Stevie resigns and who he brings back. And yeah, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see with those two. But I definitely think that they can make their mark with the Red Wings if they are not traded, or if Berggren's not traded, and those two are with the team for a full season.
For sure. Like I want to see them both in Detroit. I think they both can definitely help the Red Wings. Like I said, it just depends on if these veterans are moved out. I mean, that's the biggest thing. That's what's blocking them still. And that runs me into my off the rush question. And I'll start with you, Evan. Do you think Berggren's getting traded before the season? Does he start opening night? Let's get a prediction here.
Yeah. Oh man, that's a tough one, dude. Oh, if I had to predict right now, I could see him being traded. I think he could. I think he could be moved. Be interesting, even interesting to see in the draft to move up if there's someone that he really, really wants. If you could get up and get a Berkeley Cat, and if you could move up and get a Tija Ginla, would Berggren be worth trading up for? I don't know. It's iffy, but again, I don't know the situation. I mean, maybe you Grand Rapids guys know better than I do about how he feels about what the organization and what he's gone through. I mean, you've got to side with him with the frustration of not playing here in Detroit. I mean, at 79 games in the past 2 seasons, kid's 23 and still down in the AHL. I mean, I think the development was great for him. I think he really, really showed what he can do. But if I had to guess right now, I would predict he is our, biggest trade chip if Yzerman wants to make a move for somebody this summer.
All right, Andrew, what do you think about Berggren? Is he traded before the beginning of next season?
Yeah, it's if you don't know what's out there, what the market looks like, who wants what, where he's gonna be. I've been following this kid since, his first press conference here in Grand Rapids, which was also my first press conference with the Griffins. So I feel like I'm tied together with him. So just based on vibe, I say he's in the lineup opening night. Why not?
I hope so. I don't want to see him traded. I think he's got a real good role here, and move someone else out to make room for him is what I say. Devin, what do you think?
I'm kind of caught between the middle because I do agree with Evan's sentiment that he might be the Red Wings' best trade chip, or at least most realistic trade chip. But I also think that there's value not only in him as a player, but also how much he's going to make next season. He's a pending restricted free agent, but he's not going to make a ton on his new deal. And when you start to play around with the Red Wings roster, they re-sign Raymond, they re-sign Seider, they're talking to Perron, they're talking to Patrick Kane. Cap space goes away really fast.
Yeah.
And they're going to need guys that are on cheap deals to fill out the rest of the roster. So even just having Berggren there because he's on a cheaper deal, there's value in that. So I don't know. I do think that his name's going to be out there. I wouldn't be surprised if he's dealt. But I also think that if he's dealt, it's got to make sense. Just they got to get a player back that's going to be around for a while, and also that is signed to a deal that they can carry for a while. Just because the cap situation isn't as clean as it has been in previous years. So my official answer is, I guess we'll see.
The politician's answer right there.
That's not an
Absolutely.
answer.
Yeah, no, we'll see. We'll see what happens with him. I hope he is. I hope he's in opening night because I think he definitely can be someone that can help the Red Wings next season. All right, before we move on to more prospect talk and more Grand Rapids talk, I got to pay the bills here and talk about our Substack here at the Hockey Writers. Great newsletter you get 3 times a week. It features all our free, all the articles at the Hockey Writers delivered to your inbox for free. Also have the premium Substack that gives you tons of great articles, premium articles throughout the week and throughout the month. So take a look at that. And that's every team, prospects, NHL history, all that fun stuff. So take a look at the link below and find out more. All right, let's talk about well, not just Simon Edvinsson, but Edvinsson is probably going to be in the NHL next season. But there are other prospects could be knocking on the door as well, not just from Grand Rapids, but potentially from the Canadian Hockey League. I'm saying Nate Danielson, maybe. I'll start with you, Andrew. Are there any other prospects you expect to push for spots on this roster? I mean, not a lot of spots are probably going to be available, but they're still going to be pushing. Who do you see doing that?
Yeah, I know a big name last year at training camp was Carter Mazer and how much he was impressing the staff until, unfortunately he ran into that injury. And, he was a big cog in that line with him and Berggren and Casper, just as his role as the junkyard dog, as the way I like to call him. He would just battle in the corners and along the boards, free those pucks up, and then hit Berggren, Zarnik, whoever it was that was the recipient of his hard work. And that's the kind of stuff that this coaching staff, I know in Grand Rapids, and I'm sure in Detroit as well, just loves about this kid. Just his tenacity. The word thrown around often is compete level, and he's got tons of it. And I mean, he's gonna push for sure. I don't know if I'm certainly not gonna call him a lock, but it's just an interesting name to keep an eye out. And I got to throw Marco Casper in there as well. He looked really good in that postseason. Sometimes he was the best player on the ice there for Grand Rapids. And, I know you got to, take kind of youth into account, but this kid's game is very mature for his age. And I mean, he's very responsible on both sides of the puck. And that's, again, the kind of stuff that gives you confidence from the coaching staff. And, I know Veleno is also looking for a new deal there, but if the Wings are kind of looking elsewhere, that you could potentially fill in a gap at center there with Casper. So I know Danielson's there as well. I saw a couple games with him in Grand Rapids and just didn't look kind of comfortable. So I'm gonna reserve, but he did just kind of come off a long run in the WHL playoffs, so I'm not gonna take a knock on him or anything. There's not a lot of my opinion that I can provide based on what I saw in Grand Rapids. So those would be the top two kind of knocking on the door. Probably gonna see games with them next year. I don't know if they're gonna be regulars, but fans should be pretty familiar with them by this time next year.
2 names we love on this show. So that's we talked about Mazer potentially being the missing piece on that top line too. So yeah, he's definitely been talked about. Evan, what do you think about this? Guys that could potentially push for spots.
Well, Andrew just said everything I was thinking, so now I'm gone. No, I think one of those three is going to make the team out of training camp between Mazer, Danielson, and Casper. I think one of them does. If I had to guess right now, sheesh. I mean, this is a hard choice here to make. It's somewhere between Casper and Danielson for me. I think Mazer's going to get one more year, I think we'll see him next year, but I think he's going to start the season off in Grand Rapids. But I think you mentioned Joe Valeno. I think he's someone who might be on his way out. I think we've seen I think we've seen his ceiling. I think he's played enough NHL games to know what we're getting. Maybe thrives in a better system or a different team. But Danielson really showed up in camp last year. And, he grew leaps and bounds this year, and especially once he was traded to the Winterhawks, we saw, basically an offensive explosion for him once, he's playing around with much better players. But yeah, I think it comes down to one of those two. I like Casper because he's not afraid to muck it up and get there into the boards. But if I had to say right now, out of training camp, my pick will be Casper.
Yeah, I mean, Casper does seem like he really turned it around after the first half of the season. He started looking more comfortable in the AHL, and we'll see and he was good in his first game in the NHL, even though he was injured. So, I mean, I'd love to see him when he can be healthy in the NHL. So
you can't go wrong. You can't go wrong with any three of them. It all depends who impresses at camp. I mean, I think that's what it's gonna be. Who shows what they're made of in camp. So, hey, it's a great camp battle. It'll be exciting for us to watch and to talk about. I'm pumped for it.
Yeah. Right, Devin, anything we haven't said here that
Devin, you got nothing, man. Just
nothing.
I'm glad that we're in agreement on the three forwards that are going to push. My politician answer is that all three of them will play games with the Red Wings at some point in the season. Danielson might come later, just depending on how where he plays in the first place. I think if we're just talking about opening night, I think Casper's the one who makes the opening night roster. And it's not just because he plays that mature game and he can engage physically and all that, but he was drafted as a center, but I also think you can slide him over to the wing if there isn't a spot for him down the center immediately. Mazur's a winger. I think he can play either wing, to be honest with you. But I think that Casper being a center, there's some value in that. Centers just tend to be more valuable than wingers. And obviously they have a bit more investment in Casper too, him being a first round draft pick, right? Again, I want to reiterate, I think all of them are going to play games next season. Some more than others, but I do think we're going to get a healthy dose of kids next year. It's going to be an exciting time. One other guy I'll throw out just to kind of throw the grenade in the room and then run away. I think that Sebastian Kosa could push for some games as well.
I'm out of here.
I don't think he's pushing for like a opening night roster spot. I just don't think that that's the right plan for him, so to speak. But I would not be surprised if really quickly into the season, people are already talking about bringing him up just because he finished the season really strong in Grand Rapids. If he continues on that trajectory, he's going to be playing games in Detroit eventually.
I think he could get a look kind of like Jesper Wallstedt did in Minnesota this season.
I agree.
Yeah.
Let him see some games. Let him see how he looks and feels, and a few games there, depending on where the Red Wings are at this point, and who knows how this goalie situation is going to play out. But I'd like to see him get a few games just to get his feet in the water.
Yeah, I think he does play some games next season. I don't know about being backup or anything, but I definitely will be playing. So we got his first NHL start and a few more. All right, to finish off the show, Andrew, any other prospects you want to mention that we haven't talked about yet that you're excited about, either coming into Grand Rapids soon or already there? Who you want to shout out here?
Yeah, I know Devin kind of mentioned Amadeus Lombardi earlier, that he has had his flashes of really kind of, impressive play, not just, with his speed and what he can create offensively, but he kind of like, I don't want to use this term to kind of hype him up too much, but like some of the times when he can sneak in the neutral zone behind guys, lift the stick and take the puck away, it's just, I grew up watching Datsuk, so I'm naturally going to go there. I'm not saying this kid's the next Pavel Datsuk, but he's got some attributes that kind of remind me of him. Anyway, you're going to see a lot of a lot of movement. Obviously, Berggren's going to be moving up, and in the case that maybe Mazer makes a spot, or Casper likely, he's going to get a bigger role on this team down in Grand Rapids. And I think if he can maybe put a little weight on over the summer, he can be a real big impact player for that team next year. And another one who's been like has the draft acumen, but is kind of a little quiet last year until I think he had a really good playoff, was William Wallinder. And that's another guy who, he's not going to have the insulation of Edvinsson and Johansson. He's going to kind of get the reins of the blue line. And it's like, okay, he played a little lower in the lineup last year. Now, as kind of things shift naturally in the AHL, he's going to be the guy. Maybe Shai Bouillam's another one.
No, yeah.
And there's a lot of interesting names on that blue line where you lose Edvinsson and Johansson, but I still think that there's enough talent back there to really make this team I guess I can call them a divisional contender. They were second after all this year, and they pushed Milwaukee to 5. So, I don't think that's too much of a hot take, but a lot of good young players there that can really make a big impact in Grand Rapids.
Yeah, and you didn't mention Axel Sandin Pellikka either. He's coming soon too. I'll shout out that name. Probably one of you guys were going to tell us.
I'm going through the Griffins roster here, trying to see who Andrew left me with.
All right, Devin, who do you got? You're excited too.
I just want to say I want to reiterate and kind of piggyback off the point. I think Wallinder has a huge opportunity in front of him next season. I do think he's going to slide right into Edvinsson's spot, kind of as like the top LHD on the Griffins roster. He's going to play a lot of power play, a lot of penalty kill. Like I said, I just think he's going to get every minute he can handle next season, and I'm very excited to see how he handles it. Another guy I think that's going to have a huge opportunity, at least that maybe going off a little off book because it's not quite a Griffin, because I think he has to play in the WHL next year still, is Emmett Finney actually. And the reason I bring him up is because he did play 3 games with the Griffins late in the season, after his season with the Kamloops Blazers finished. He got a taste of AHL action, but I think that he has a really big opportunity to build on his success this season. He signed an ELC with the Red Wings late in March, to build on the momentum that he has, and then kind of just vault him forward and either onto the AHL roster at the beginning or end. I'm not really sure where he has to be, but I think, like I said, I think he has to be in the W at least to start next season. But he's got a lot of momentum behind him, and I'd like to see him build on it. And for what it's worth, he was a 7th round pick in last year's draft. So it's one of those things where if he can be literally anything, you take that, because you don't really expect anything from 7th round picks. So
yeah,
exciting that he even earned a contract this quickly, right?
For sure. All right, Evan, you got a minute. What do you have anyone else?
You guys have hijacked everything I wanted to say. Damn you guys. Well, I'm going to go a different route here and then talk about players that I think it's like, shit or get off the pot. Soderblom.
There you go. There you go.
We know what this guy is yet. It's a very strange. I'm not sure what the direction he goes in. It seems like he's kind of stuck where they're not sure what kind of player he's going to develop into. To make the roster 2 seasons ago and then not play a game since, it's kind of strange to me. Also, I want to see Tumisto. He's 23 now.
Yeah.
And, he's a big boy, 6'5". I don't think he has progressed to the point where the Red Wings are completely sure what kind of player he's going to be. So I think, next season's going to be, for those two, is going to be big seasons in the AHL, because obviously I think they're going to start there unless Soderblom does something crazy in camp. But those are 2 guys I'm going to keep my eyes on next year for the Griffins, because I think it's big.
Yeah. Yeah, those 2 are definitely going to be big ones. All right. Well, thanks Andrew for coming on the show and talking Griffins. Lots of fun discussion there. I'll have to have you on again before the regular season starts and talk more about it. But thanks Evan. Thanks Devin for another show. Make sure to checking out all of our stuff at thehockeybears.com, the Substack. But until our next episode, we'll see you in another episode of The Grind Line.